Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Sarah from Who I Am Among the Pages, and if you're new here, thanks for stopping by, and if you're not, thanks for sticking around. So first off, I want to apologize how I look. I am looking raggedy with greasy hair and in my favorite sweatshirt, which I haven't showed you guys. This is Once Upon a Time there was a girl who really loved books and guinea pigs. It was me at the end. Because yeah, got two little babies upstairs, love them to death. So I am back in school in the semester. I just got out of bed not that long ago. I've been working on classes. I have a splitting headache that will not go away. So for right now, I'm trying my prescription glasses to see if anything gets any better. So I do apologize for the awful glare that I kind of like playing with on my glasses. I do have coming in the mail today, which hopefully it'll be here today, but everybody in America knows how the mail's been. So hopefully today, tomorrow, sometime, I will be getting a set of blue light glasses to see if that does help, because right now all of my classes are online, so I am spending considerable amounts of time per day on the computer plus the typical TV and phone, which none of that is very good for you. It all produces blue light. And a lot of the stuff I use at work also has a screen on it that produces blue light, even though I do work in a dining hall. So yeah, I'm going to try those out, see if it helps, and if they do, I'll give a review on here because they might help somebody else out, especially those of us that are e-readers. I also, on Friday, published the next chapter of number 9 on Wattpad, and I really hope you guys enjoy it because for the first time, I'm actually sitting down and like truly plotting things out. I'm not sure what's changed, but all of a sudden I have like a new perspective with writing and I'm not struggling as much to do it. Just like with reading, all of a sudden it's like I've been able to buckle down and just make it a part of like a daily routine. Whereas in the past, I've had this kind of unhealthy mentality that especially during a semester, no matter what, school always comes first and there's like nothing else to life other than school and work. And I don't know, it's like all of a sudden that's dawned on me that there's so much more to life than that. I'm only gonna be in college for another year. So after that, like I still have to have interests and things I enjoy doing. And I've been letting school and work be an excuse to not move forward personally. So I am really trying to remedy that. So yeah, I almost have the book finished, plotted out. Hopefully there'll be another chapter tomorrow, but I can definitely guarantee there'll be one on Friday because I'm almost done with the one I'm working on now. We should be finished up by chapter 60. And I think we're at I think this one released tomorrow will be chapter 47. So yeah, that pretty much sums up all of my little announcements, other than I want to apologize if you hear the click, click, click of dog toes, because my boyfriend and I do have a dog here, and she's very sweet, but of course you can hear her. Let me see. Emma, come here. She wants to introduce herself. Come here. Oh, this is Emma. She's a cockapoo. Oh, and she loves people, so she says, hi, internet. Huh? Hi, internet. So yeah, from here on out, you'll probably always hear her some in the background of videos because I'm not going to shut her in somewhere so I can make a YouTube video, even though she is noisy and hits the tripod. So you have to forgive me, but it's her house too. So yeah, after all that, we're 4 minutes into the video, but today we are going to be ranting about The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. I picked this book up on Black Friday, and honestly, I had been wanting to read it for a while. I think this came out about a year ago now. 2019, so a little over a year ago. But I had heard that this was like the vampire story to bring back vampires, to make them like part of like the mainstream entertainment the way that like Twilight was for a while. And I'll admit I was never a Twilight fan. I read the first book and actually enjoyed it, but I was also like 12 and it was one of the first YA books I'd ever read. But then I tried reading the second book. I think that was New Moon. A year or two later, and just I couldn't get through it. I mean, it was just so not for me. It was just impossible to pull myself through. So I did DNF it, and I haven't touched Twilight since. But I do really enjoy paranormal stories. I really want to like vampire fiction, and I thought this one would be a good one for me to pick up because it does take place in 1872 New Orleans, and I've always wanted to visit New Orleans, especially during the Mardi Gras. And this does, at least at first, I think the whole thing takes place relatively close together during Mardi Gras. And it's a time period that I've always been pretty interested in, or it's at least close. I've always been big on American Civil War history, and this takes place less than 10 years after the end of the war during Reconstruction. And Emma is about to hit the tripod again, so I'm sorry. So yeah, I really thought that this was going to be something that like really grabbed me and was like a way for me to really get into vampire fiction for the first time. And it was not. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads when I finished it. But I remember arguing with myself over it just because I was like, well, it's my first book of the year. It can't be a 1-star read. But I am going to go back and adjust it, hopefully, if I remember to, because this was absolutely, for me, a 1-star read. I found it very hard to get into, very difficult to be engrossed in. I was definitely forcing myself to read it, and it was not a fun experience at all. I had read one Renee Ahdieh book before, and that was, oh crap, what was that called? It was The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I remember seeing Sasha Alsberg talk about it when I first discovered BookTube, and she just loved it. So at that point in my life, anything that Sasha Alsberg loved, I was going to buy. But yeah, I remember reading The Wrath and the Dawn. I was probably about 15, and I hated it. I hated it so much. But that was totally different kind of story. I mean, you know, there's like a romance similarity, but totally different in any other way. So I was like, well, you know, I'll definitely give this a try because it sounds so interesting, and a lot of people had raved about it. But no, I hated this book. This was definitely 1 out of 5 stars, and not at all a good way to kick off the year for me. Because after this, I was in like burnout mode. I was expecting to get a ton of reading done this month, and because of this book, I just didn't want to read. Like, I got stuck on like, you know, the act of staring at the page and not being involved with the story that you're reading, and I hate that. I don't know why I forced myself to finish this. I need to get out of the habit of doing that. So as I usually do, I'm going to try to start this rant off of saying 5 things I did like about the book. I guess the first would be the time period. Like I said, I've always been big on Civil War history in America, and this book does take place in the very deep South after the conclusion of the war. And there's several mentions of the war having taken place and like the changes that wrought on New Orleans and just the South in general. So I thought it was interesting to see a book set in this area because I don't think I've ever read anything vampire fiction, straight historical fiction, romance, whatever, that took place in that specific time period. I don't think Reconstruction is very widely written about. And it's actually, if you're not familiar with it, is a really interesting time period in America's history. So many changes were taking place. There's so many things that we know today that came about because of the Reconstruction period. But that is not for me to teach. I am not a history major. I'm not a history teacher. I will be an English teacher, so I am not qualified to speak on it. But I did enjoy that. The second was the morally gray characters. So we follow Celine, and I cannot remember her last name. Celine Rousseau. Is our main protagonist, and she is very morally gray. She has fled to New Orleans because she killed somebody. So just knowing that, you automatically want to dislike her. She's a murderess, whatever you want to call her. But you go further into the story, and we learn that she murdered somebody because he cornered her and tried to sexually assault her, and she, you know, struck out with what she had available there to defend herself, and she didn't intend to kill him. She only wanted to defend herself from him. And I think that creates that morally gray character that I really enjoyed reading about, because she also has some insight and definitely struggles with what she did, and I just really enjoy reading about characters like that. So the third was the cast of mainly female characters. Like all the characters that we really get to know are all female, and they're so different, but each have their own strengths. So Celine is definitely a very flawed, very, I don't want to say like a depressed, that's like really general and not something I like to play with when describing characters. But she's very deep. She's very complex. She's very aware of her own flaws. She's flawed. So that was really interesting. And she's also a very passionate person. Her passion is sewing and creating dresses. And I don't think that's ever anything I've come across in a character. So then we have her friend, and I can't remember her friend's name for the life of me. That's what, I mean, the characters in this, as much as I liked them, just weren't memorable. Pippa. Pippa is very sweet and very delicate and feminine, and wants to believe the best of everybody and everything, which is something that Celine is definitely not. And later on in the story, I can't remember her name. There's another character that she comes across who's very strong-willed, very, I can't remember her name. Cannot find it. She's very strong-willed, very sure of herself. She goes out dressed like a man. She doesn't care. And, you know, remember the time period. And I really enjoy that. So the third thing, I think I'm on the third thing, would just be, no, I'm on the fourth thing. Fourth thing, I hate this book. I guess would just be the inclusion of vampires, because I do think and like the way the vampires are portrayed in this book, because the vampires are also morally gray. We find out as we go along who the vampires are. It's not immediately made available to us, and it seems like there is a dividing line between good and bad vampires, and I know that was in Twilight. I don't know much about it. But in this context, I really enjoyed it because of the inclusion of such great characters, not knowing, like, they could really stand on either side of things. It depends on the context and how you choose to view them. And I think that's a really great way to make traditional monsters and beasts into something that can be read in a modern story. Well, I mean, this doesn't take place in the modern world, but it is a modern piece of fiction. So by having these constructs that we think about today when it comes to like people that commit crimes, I think it makes the monster that you're trying to include seem more human, seem more believable, and it makes you think more about them other than, ooh, big scary vampire. You know what I mean? Or no, ooh, sparkly vampire. Like, it just, I don't mean to crap on Twilight. It was not my thing. So when I do make jokes, if you like Twilight, by all means like it, because I did enjoy the first book. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. So other than that, the last thing I liked, oh God. I guess like the aesthetic of the book, like it definitely to me had like almost an art, like a dark academia vibe to it, even though that's not at all what it was. But there's lots of imagery of like rainy nights and old cathedrals and old buildings and like New Orleans richness to it, like the draping canopies over beds and silk and satin and just plushness to it. And I did enjoy that. Because a lot of those vibes, I guess is the best way to put it, do go into the characters themselves. So everything builds towards this really almost traditional vampire feel that if you've ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula, you will know it's very rich, very decadent, I guess would be the best way to put it. So it does have a good feel to it, but unfortunately, I can name way more than 5 things I did not like about it. So the first, the prose. The prose are gorgeous, and I will give Renee Audier that. But the prose, the literary quality of them, the meditative quality, it does not fit with YA fiction very well. It can be done, but I, for one, am not a fan of very flowery prose just because it's what I read for school. And although I have a lot of respect for it, finding very traditional literary prose in books that I'm reading for fun is very disheartening because it's like, oh shit, I'm reading like it feels like I'm reading an assignment and then I don't get into it. I don't remember it. Like, I mean, there's a lot of books I read for school that I can divide into ones that I didn't like and I did like, and I can tell exactly what line they fall on as far as flowery prose. I just don't think I'm a fan of it. I do enjoy like pretty descriptions, but after the pretty description, I want to move on. I want the action. I want, even if it is a character-based story, I want to know how they feel in layman's terms. I don't need 10 paragraphs on how somebody's eyes reflecting the sunlight, yada yada yada. And I'm guilty of doing this in my writing. I think everybody is, because we're taught to show don't tell, so over explaining I think is a problem. So that moving into my second thing is very closely related to that, with the show don't tell. This book is filled with so much showing that sometimes it is better to just tell. Like, as a writer, it's such a huge struggle. Like, I know I overstress myself with this to the extreme, and if you go read number 9, I haven't fully edited it yet. I'm just trying to get through it. There's plenty of instances where I should have just said what was happening, said what it looked like, what was laying on the ground, like things like that. It's a fine line, because if you take creative writing courses, especially like in high school, like what you're taught about creative writing in high school is that you never want to say, oh, Jimmy felt faint. You want to say, oh, you know, Jimmy stood on the ground that began to waver around him, and the room spun as he crashed to the floor. Like, and although that's gorgeous, there is a time to have prose like that, but then there is a time where it is okay to say the simpler thing. And Renee Ahdieh never says a simpler thing. I don't know how this book isn't longer. So the third thing, again, kind of building on that, is that I really don't feel like anything happened in this book. Like, I cannot tell you, other than like major things, like when the guy comes in, it turns out to be like the bad vampire. A bad vampire kills a man and throws it in Celine's room. Other than that, like, I can't really tell you anything that happened. And I did read this book, and it took me a while. I think it took me over a week to read this. I think it has to do with the prose. I'm not really sure, but it was not memorable at all. So the fourth thing was that I could not get into it. I think it's a combination of everything that I have talked about. But I couldn't get into it. Sitting reading was more like how you read. For me, it was like how you read a textbook. You're reading to absorb information, and I normally read to experience a story rather than know the story. Of course, you want to remember what you read. You always do. That's one of the main things you teach a kid is reading comprehension. You want them to know what they read. It's a life skill. It's a job skill. But when I'm reading for pleasure, I not only want to be able to remember the story, comprehend it, I want to, I don't want to just retain what I read. I want to be in the story. I want an author to grab me by the neck and rip me into their world, and I don't want to let go until I'm done with the book. And that is so not what happened with this. It felt like just absorbing the information about these people as if I was reading a historical account rather than fiction. So the last thing, I guess, is just, overall, I don't like Renee Ahdieh. Like, I've now tried 2 books of hers. I just don't think she's for me. I hit it again. If Renee Ahdieh is your favorite author, then by all means, love her. I can see where she has a lot of merit. I'm not saying she's not a good author. I'm not saying her work isn't valuable. I'm just saying that is not for me. And like, I think I came in biased to this book because I knew it was Renee Ahdieh. So yeah, that's probably my bad. But yeah, so to wrap up this 18, 19, 20-minute video, 1-star read. I do not recommend. This is not, if you're trying to get into vampire fiction like me, this is not the book to try it. This is more of a book for somebody that, as a rule, is a huge fan of Renee Ahdieh, or as a rule has already loved vampire fiction for so long, you just want to absorb everything in the genre. I do think this does hold some value because it does discuss some race relations and some deeper topics of, again, like morally gray, like, is it okay to kill somebody if it's in defense of yourself? Well, what things you're defending yourself from make it okay to kill? And there's lots of discussions around some pretty heavy things that I think are important to talk about. There's a lot of feminist issues, but just speaking as a reader to another reader, I didn't enjoy it and I would not recommend. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video. I'm sorry I was such a Debbie Downer, but I do have a much, much, much more positive book review, book rant coming up on none other than the wonderful Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, because I did finish my reread of that. I started it immediately after The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, and I could do an entire like 8-hour live stream on A Court of Mist and Fury. I hope you all have read it, because I just want to be able to rant and everybody just automatically know what I'm talking about, so we can just love this book together. So yeah, other than that, I'm not going to get into that in this video because I am just going to keep going. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope you decide to come back for the next video. Peace!